Thank you for the announcement. Well, I hope I will at least start answering this question, maybe not fully. I'm Slavica Robić. I come from NGO based in Zagreb, but we work through different projects across Croatia and in many other countries in the region and across of EU, because we are mostly project funded. We have at the moment 7 full-time employees and 1 intern, and we work in 2 main areas. So one is transition to low-carbon society, and in that field we work not only on mitigation but also on adaptation. We're actually very excited that we will soon have a big interact starting at the Adapt that Mr. Šimek mentioned in earlier presentation. We are one of Croatian partners in it, and we also work in the field of alleviating energy poverty. Why I'm presenting today this task is because we are trying to repeatedly show that those 2 things are closely interlinked, and that unfortunately very often in different, be it mitigation or adaptation policies, we forget that there are certain groups of very vulnerable people who get more impacted by the climate change and who receive very little, if any, support through the current policies. So why is it important? So first, it's important to understand that even Universal Declaration of Human Rights actually talks about the fact that we shouldn't have energy poverty, because we have agreed that everybody should have a decent standard of living, and living in energy poverty denies people of the basic standard. And also, it's important to understand that energy poverty is a global issue that is very present locally. So we have a lot of problems with energy poverty in Croatia, and that those who are actually most vulnerable to changing climate and those who will need more support to adaptation are actually the vulnerable groups, including energy poor. So this is what I will try to explain and highlight today during my presentation. So hopefully when we are designing strategies and policies, we will remember that special attention needs to be put to the most vulnerable groups. Hopefully technology will work. I just want to show you 1 minute of one short movie. Okay, thank you. This is me talking and I'm here, so... Yeah, thank you. So now we can continue with the presentation. In live. So why I wanted to show you this, because this is a video that we developed in one of our EU-funded projects, Robić. This is an actual person suffering from energy poverty, but this is not the closest to the worst what we have seen. We have visited almost 500 households in Croatia. So far, unfortunately, only in the continental Croatia, but we have now submitted project proposal. Hopefully, it will be successful, where we would like to continue actions in the coast. Why am I saying coast and continental area? Because when people talk about energy poverty, they often forget it's not only heating. It was mentioned in the previous discussion, we focus so much on the heating, and climate change is not only about heating. Yes, it's one of the segments, but it's also cooling, which in Croatia, we know we already have very high cooling requirements, and they will increase. So what is energy poverty? The most known definition is the one who says that energy poverty occurs when a household is unable to have adequate energy services for 10% of income, but this talks about the need to spend. Unfortunately, in the media, it is often falsely represented as absolute spending. What does it mean? It means that in UK they calculate how much a house requires energy to reach a decent standard. So for example, 21 degrees Celsius in the living room, 18 in bedroom, etc. They calculate the amount of energy. Then they calculate how much that amount of energy would cost. Then they look what percentage of income would that take. So it's calculated. Whereas what happens in reality that many times people spend less than 10%. Why? Because they can't afford to spend 10%, because perhaps they need money for the food. So they are actually spending less than 10%, but they live in a cold, humid, dark homes. So it's important not to use this definition in absolute terms as it is often done. Another problem is that even the need to spend for our country and for many Southeast European countries would have numbers of 60% or more of population being energy poor, and there are no policies that government can design that would immediately target such a number. So it's important to take this definition when we talk about energy poverty before we put a number to it, that we're talking about socially and materially necessary levels of energy, which is different per country. In general terms, the main causes are lack of finances, inability to improve energy efficiency. So because many people don't have funds to invest in energy efficiency, they're stuck in this scenario where they just can't improve their living conditions, which leads to consequences. The main and most important one is deteriorated health, its physical health and mental health, and also exclusion from the societies and many other side effects of living in such conditions. All the photos that you will see in the presentation were taken in actual homes of people in Croatia by our volunteers. As you may know, in our countries we have a very specific building stock to a great extent. So we have problems with very low levels of energy efficiency. We're talking about ratings of E or lower in many cases, which means that we are wasting a lot of energy not only for heating but for cooling, because if you don't have insulation, you are heating or cooling basically your neighborhood. There is also an issue with cultural and social inheritance, because traditionally energy was so cheap. People are just used to using a lot of energy, opening the windows for cooling. So there are many issues with education that need to happen to change the mindset, not only the physical energy efficiency. Current situation with policy in energy poverty in Croatia, we don't have official definition, not a numerical one, not a descriptive one. We don't have all-encompassing definition of vulnerable energy consumer. So basically, definition of energy poverty is needed for statistics, because if we would have definition, then Croatian Bureau of Statistics would say in 2018 we had 30% of energy poor, in 2019 we had 25%, and we would know whether the policies work or not. But the policies actually target the vulnerable energy consumers, so those would be the groups of people who are more likely than average population to be energy poor, and this is how you target them. In Croatia, at the moment, we say that energy poor are those who are recipients of social support and disability support. So this is the group of people that has already been in the system from before. It was the easiest to target. But those two groups, although they overlap to a great extent, there is much more energy poor people than there is socially vulnerable, in general, poverty people. We have a very limited policy that gives them so-called vouchers, discount on electricity bills. It only applies to electricity, and it does not help in any case whatsoever, either to adapt to climate change or to contribute to mitigation. As I mentioned, we did a lot of field visits in Croatia, and we hope to do more. And what we have found, and we have proven that it's in line with world research, that those people have very adverse impacts on health, and their socio-economic status is much lower than of average Croatian population. And these are some slides just to show you what happened in the field. So we did find that more than 90% of the dwellings that we visited had no insulation whatsoever, none, zero. So those were old buildings, mostly family houses, the windows were often single glazed, so basically there were massive heating losses and energy losses on appliances as well, because appliances were often more than 40 years old. We have found that most of them have problems with continuous draft through windows. By that I mean because the windows are not insulated. There is always a flow of air going through the home, which is in winter times very problematic, because no matter how much you heat up the home, it's always cold at the bottom. And that also has adverse impacts on health and high prevalence of mold, which is proven to cause many respiratory issues. So that is why energy poor population is very affected by that. We have heard in previous presentation that climate change will impact elderly more. But we must not forget it's not only elderly in this group, there are also children, working population, and it has been proven that their physical health is worse than general population, especially respiratory and cardiovascular problems that they have because they live in these conditions. On a global level, you probably are aware that the wealthiest consume more than the poorest. So we have this problem: how will we reduce the energy poverty and enable enough energy to the poorest while protecting climate from changing further? And if you look at the scenarios with current energy poverty alleviation policies, there is a part of where it's missing out of the table, but it says energy poverty alleviation policies by 2030 on global level. Basically, this is amount of energy, or more precise to say, about 7% of energy use would be increased as compared to business as usual scenario if we want to have everybody have access to decent amount of electricity and to move from traditional fossil fuels and stuff like that. So basically, although the number is huge, this is a very interesting citation that I found in one paper, is basically that the whole increase in emissions resulting from ensuring universal access to electricity could be offset by adopting our EU regulations only for the US cars. So even though it's massive, the wealthiest, and I don't mean just US, this is just example, by making reduction policies, we can help and make that happen. Many are still not aware that Covenant of Mayors, in addition to supporting mitigation and adaptation as key policies for the local authorities, now also talks about energy poverty. So basically all of the local level planning should take care that energy poverty is considered and that the policies support those people. Why? Because on EU level we have huge number of people who cannot keep their homes comfortable during summer, warm during winter, and many face that because they are unable to pay their utility bills on time. Another important aspect to consider, especially in local planning, is the access to public transport. We have a lot of problems with that in Croatia, and it is often overlooked with any of the adaptation and mitigation policies. We don't take into consideration how do people actually commute. So we have heard in previous presentation what do we expect in Croatia. So some of these bullets were actually taken from our adaptation strategy. So there is a link to energy poverty, because there will be increase in summer temperatures. Of course, those will have health impacts. And the energy poor, those who live in the worst dwellings, those who have the worst appliances, will feel them the most. Another problem is in the winter. Although the winters in general will be warmer, there are cold spells, which means that people will have continuous problems still with heating in those certain days. So the question is, how can we help the energy poor? We are stuck in this dilemma that if we want to decrease poverty and energy poverty, we need to increase the energy use, which then results in increase in CO2 emissions. So we have a problem for climate. On the other hand, if we are wanting to reduce CO2 through different policies of mitigation, we usually cause the increase in energy prices because we distorted the market, which means we increase the poverty and energy poverty. So this is a continuous dilemma. How can we achieve the both? Well, basically, the first and most logical first solution is, and we have heard this already today, is energy efficiency. This is the solution that, without any doubt, at the same time improves the living conditions, decreases CO2 emissions, and reduces poverty and energy poverty. So it is very worrisome and makes me wonder why we still don't invest more in energy efficiency, because the cheapest energy is energy not used. And reaching any of the EU level or global level targets for renewables are usually linked to the overall energy that you use. So if you use this much of energy and you need 20% of this to come from renewables, you need this much renewables. And if you use this much of total energy because you use less because of energy efficiency, your 20% is this, it's cheaper. It is probably because renewables are more attractive. We as an NGO, we are very pro-renewables. But whenever possible, we should take a first step of energy efficiency, and we should design the social tariffs in a way that they support renewables and energy efficiency, not just give out money to people. They are like short-term solutions. They don't help them adapt to climate change. They don't help them contribute to mitigation of climate change. They just help them pay the bills. There are schemes in other countries where we also have social tariffs, like in Croatia, everybody pays a certain amount of per kilowatt hour of energy used that goes to social tariff fund, which is then distributed to socially vulnerable. You can distribute it to a fund and provide socially vulnerable, for example, with photovoltaics or energy efficiency improvements, which helps them improve the quality of life, not only reduce their energy bills. It's important to remember when we do not only mitigation, which is still more in the mainstream talk, we're just realizing that we will need to adapt because we will surpass the certain threshold of global heat increase. There will still be problems with energy efficiency of the heating systems, of the cooling systems. In most cases, I would even say lack of cooling systems that will appear because we will need them. And continuous, as I mentioned, draft through windows and doors. All of this can be fixed through energy efficiency improvements. So our main recommendations when we do make plans and strategies and policies and laws, to start with the low-hanging fruits, which we have demonstrated through our visits, and those are the low-cost energy efficiency and energy-saving measures. Those homes that we visited where we gather data, we also equip them with low-cost energy efficiency measures. We did a simple energy audit, and we provided them with things like LED light bulbs, draft proofing for windows and doors, those things that you can stick around to make a better draft proofing, electrical timers for electrical boilers, because many of them are very old and they have them 24/7 on. They don't regulate when they switch them on and off. Switches, aerators for water taps, because water use is also a problem and it's linked to energy. And basically the value of the package was in one project 40 euro, in another 100 euro per household, and we have already achieved significant savings and reductions in their energy bills. And this is something that will be started at the national level. There are measures in the 4th National Energy Efficiency Action Plan, but it has not yet been adopted, even though it's for the period 2017 to 2019. So we are waiting for the adoption so that hopefully those measures could be implemented. One is Program for Energy Poverty, it's in the draft, and the other one is advisors about energy efficiency. And then from that we move on to more costly measures. All of those measures, most of them at least, contribute to both mitigation and to adaptation, because efficient dwellings are more resilient to climate change. This was the movie that we have already seen, and I like to finish the presentation with remembering why it matters. Hopefully, when you continue your work later on, you will remember the energy poor in your measures. This is one home that we visited. I was in that home. It's owned by a man in his 40s. He lost a job because the industry fell apart in this city. He is very difficult to employ because he's uneducated and he's too old. So He got debts with energy bills because the period of him getting into social welfare system was too long, so he was already cut off from the electricity grid before he was protected. He cut himself off from water because there was a leakage in pipes and he could not repair it, and he was afraid there will be more debt. So he has no running water, he has a well, there are fish swimming in it, he says it's good well, there are fish swimming in it. He has no electricity. Now he is in the social welfare system, but he can't get reconnected because the cost of reconnection is too high. He has old meter, he will need to pay for old meter, etc. So these are all examples. Oh yes, and this is his window which is broken and he has no money to repair it, so the thing is always down. And there are many cases like that that we have seen in homes of people. So these are people's living rooms. And these are people that we are talking about. Most of them did not want to have their photos taken. Some of them did agree, like this old lady. What we did is not a solution, low-cost energy efficiency measures, but it's a good start. This is another thing that we did, I forgot to mention, reflective foils behind radiators because they reflect more heat and increase the comfort level. Not so much energy savings, but the comfort level is better. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Robić. Your co-chair is yours. Questions are welcome. As you know, we are going to talk about this. I'm impressed. I do live in Croatia, but some things I don't know. I have to admit that. Any questions? Well, I will start first. Okay, you were talking about small things for big changes. It's 3rd of October. Look outside. Are we poor or rich?
Well, depends what you're asking about.
About energy. We were talking about energy, about Croatia. We have everything.
Yeah.
Why don't we use that?
Well, that's the main issue. I think we all together, it's always easy to blame either government or any specific segment of society. But I think we can only actually make change if we all start working together. And remembering that there are some people that will need more help. So this is why we put so much emphasis on energy poverty, because in Croatia there has been so little focus on this specific group of people that is actually very vulnerable. And for them, it doesn't matter if it will be too hot or too cold, it will be bad for them in any case. And the more climate changes, the worse it will be, especially for their health. So even on national level, we talk about strategies and we talk about only specific groups of people. Yes, elderly are impacted heavily, and most of them actually fall into the category of energy poor, but there are many children. That's why I show you that graph, that most of the houses that we visited had actually 5 household members, and many of them had small children. And many of those small children already have respiratory problems because they live in inadequate conditions. So we are rich in terms of renewables that we have potential to use, but there is a lot of room to improvement on how we improve them and how we improve energy efficiency.
And I think that whole day today we are talking about in some circle. Do you talk with the government? Do you talk with the people? Is there any other option that we can use those money? We are not poor. We have money. We have very good place for living. We have energies, different kind of energies, but we don't use it properly as we have to do that. That could be the main problem.
We talk with government, we talk with citizens. Actually, those 2 measures that I mentioned that came into the draft of 4th National Energy Efficiency Action Plan were prepared by us in collaboration with government representatives. So we prepared the drafts through public consultations that lasted through a project 2 or 3 years. And then we presented it as a policy proposal, which was then adopted in draft. Hopefully it will be adopted in final document as well. But we are always late with adoption of those documents. This is another thing to consider because, for example, director of the Energy Efficiency and Environmental Protection Fund has, in the conference at the beginning of this year, said that they reallocated funds for some of these actions that I presented. They put it in the programming period, but they can't act before this plan is adopted. So there is a lot of room for improvement, but yes, we try to communicate with all groups of stakeholders.
Then we have the same thing that we were talking about, that the man from Eastern Agency, he was talking about governance and some things that we have to do. On the other side, we do something and we don't know, is that going to be implemented in those laws or whatever, or some regulations. It's not easy, it's a heavy job.
Well, it is a heavy job, and we have already problems with adoptions of laws, and that's not even the hardest part. The hardest part is actual implementation. But we, I think, also as a nation, have this joint issue of not taking laws seriously. On one presentation, there was one person who raised a hand and asked, is this only law, or do we really have to do it? So it's a real life story. I've been at that conference when the question happened. So this also shows part of the problem. So there are many segments, but I think everybody in this room is on the other side of the story. That's why they're here. So as long as you have this potential of people who are willing to act, I'm very optimistic things will change and we will adapt. And
did you see our faces? We were smiling when we were talking about law, about everything, but we are not smiling while we are watching real life in Croatia.
Well, yes, this is the reality, and these video clips have been very useful for us actually to raise the impact. We organized a conference in the EU Parliament through this project with many high officials coming there, and most of them were shocked by the pictures and movies that we see in everyday life of Croatia. We are very good in pretending it's not there, but it's everywhere. And we have seen, as I said, much worse things that were shown in this movie. This lady was the only one out of 500 something who agreed to be filmed. Those people don't want to go out in front of cameras, they don't want to be filmed, they don't want to be labeled as energy poor. She only agreed because her daughter was our volunteer, so otherwise, no, it's very hard to find those people and put them in the eye of public.
How many people in Croatia are living in those conditions, in percents, around?
See, that's the thing, we don't have official statistics, we don't monitor that. We do monitor official statistics like errors, how people are late with paying their utility bills. For some years, those numbers go over 60%. We have numbers, how many people have felt cold during some time of the winter. Those numbers go up to 10% in some years. I can't remember now from the top of my head. We have statistics per segments, but we don't have statistics that would say how many people are energy poor in Croatia. And this is what we are trying to change, that we start monitoring that, because then we can see if the policies we have are working or they're not working. At the moment, we can only guess.
I can talk about this so much because I was impressed. Is there any question? Yeah, Ms. Branka.
Well, once again, thanks for all this information. They're impressive, but not in a positive way. But I think that we are talking a lot about our laws, our European directives, government of Croatia, and etc. It is really necessary. But I'm coming from the sphere where we plan something like that. Well, my ground education, I'm engineer of architecture, and I must say that it is a great question. If we are good prepared, if we are good educated, if we really know what we wish to do in Croatia, and of course on all countries which lies on Mediterranean area, we have so many protocols, Barcelona protocol, etc., but we forgot to implement that in our usual work. We changed a lot our surrounding just in the last 50 years, I can say. We use a different way of building, different way of planning. Some sites, some villages, some cities, we cut some ways of natural ways of water. We change a lot of part of nature with some another things, and we change a way of buildings. That you have show us. There are the buildings which I must say are built wrong. So with so thin walls. They change in continental part of Croatia, also in this Adriatic zone, or we said a coastal area of Republic of Croatia, completely change a way of building, the model of building. In the past, there were completely different way of building. If you arrive in summertime in some of this old house, you will not feel hot, you will not need cooling, it is necessary to feel good. The same situation is on the north part of Croatia. But we changed that. We today need a lot of heating in winter time, and I think that it is really the question of education. We must change our education. Of course, on my faculty of architecture in Zagreb, we have department for such a green building, and some professors are dealing a lot about this, Professor Mišević, etc. But it is not enough. I think that it is the most, it is not expensive. It is the first step that we must do if we prepare the measures for such a climate change in Croatia. Of course, the law is something which obligates all of us, but if the experts are not prepared for that, it is starting in the first step you start wrong. I think that education is also necessary to include beside all of that we have here today.
I agree with you fully. We have made quite a lot of efforts trying to impact both the higher education, primary education system. Whenever we have opportunity, we work on projects like that. At the moment, we also have some ongoing projects in which we collaborate with different educational institutions, with elementary schools, with universities. I do have to agree with you that it's very worrisome. I have seen presentation of research done on, I don't remember how many students in Croatia, but it was a representative sample. It was done by people who do sociological research, and they have found that students of technical faculties have a very low level of belief in climate change, that it actually exists, and they don't really think renewables are anything. So when I've seen those results, I was very, very shocked and worried, but that's the reality. It was done, I think, 2 years ago. It was at a conference by Institute for Political Ecology held in Zagreb. I don't remember the name of the research, but I do remember the name of researchers. If you're interested, I would be happy to share the name. So yes, there is a lot of potential to change the system from the earliest age. Kids in kindergarten who have been proven to be great motivators of change, they come home to parents and they say, "Mommy, mommy, switch off the light," because they have heard that in kindergarten, and building up from there. We are trying to change that, but it's a slow process, but I fully agree with you.
And of course, I have to say that those buildings that we saw on your presentation were self-built, and most of them are without license. I do not say about this one, but yeah, most of them, they are not organized built.
Well, we didn't have that part in the questionnaire, so I can't say for sure, but yes, I would guess that many of them were, but the situation was not much better in the multifamily houses that we visited that were built during 70s, 60s, and that period of time, a lot of concrete type of build, very inefficient. So we have But there is also a problem with some of those people, their houses don't meet basic construction standards of today, from what I understand. I'm an electrical engineer, so it's not really my expertise, but from what I understand, some of those houses you can't even do retrofits because they don't meet static requirements. So that's another issue. In some countries you have schemes for reallocating those people. We had a question in our questionnaire: if you would be offered alternative accommodation, would you be willing to move? We had to kick out that question after 20 or 30 homes because people freaked out when we asked the question because they thought we are going to evict them from their house. Yeah. So that's another segment to do education.
Yeah, of course. And Ms. Branka reminded me of something. Our traditional houses in this area, they are very good. They are very good with energies, and of course those walls, those windows, those things. Our old were smarter than us, or
I'm not competent to answer this question, but I guess.
Yeah, they were thinking about that. Is there any experience from Italy about same things about this? Any of our partners? Yeah.
Okay, from Italy, so Pesaro, Central Adriatic area, we can say that since we are not investigating this type of climate change effect in our territories, even if we know that the cost of energy is increasing. So probably in a future scenario, no, like scenario LCP, and looking at the capacity of middle class to have this cost in their local normal budget, because in Italy, like in other parts of Central Europe, is changing the ratio of poor, rich, and middle class. You know, middle class is increasing. Okay. So probably in future, but probably is current a real problem to mitigation, to climate change effect on. Also in Italy, but other part of Europe, is the migration from climate change. You are an NGO, so I don't know if you are also looking for this thematic. A lot of migrants that come in Italy, especially from central part of Africa nowadays, so Mali. In Mali, you know, climate change effect, this presentation today talk about the global effect of climate change, because we are to understand that the effects are different. So part of migrants that come in Italy, in other part of Europe, come because they are now affected by climate change. In Mali, they had in the past, they had 5th month of rain in a year. Now are 2 months in 1 year in the last 15 years. So agriculture is not more possible in large part of Mali. So we have to migrate in other part of the world. And probably when we rise the migrant, we are not, there's a problem of culture, we are not ready to understand this aspect, because we talk about climate change in our country, but we have not idea. So probably the effect on social, on climate change is not only from poverty or people in our country, but also with the migrant. I would like to understand by your experience that you work in an NGO, if you are looking at this is a thematic that is you are dealing.
Okay, thank you. Well, we have not up to date worked specifically with immigrants. In either case, we did actually submit some project proposals now, in which part of the actions would be on analyzing the impact of what will happen because of the climate change induced immigration, specifically in Croatia and other partner countries, but we did not yet have funding to do activities specifically like that. But I agree, it's an emerging issue that will just continue to grow, and I don't think it's likely it will decrease in any.
So we can start to work about this in the future.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank
You
you.
are so good. You know, everybody was asking something. Thank you.